Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming out. I know many of you. It's great to see your faces, especially recent grads and those that are seniors that we didn't get to properly vet before you left. My name is John Cavallero. I teach rhetoric, film, and screen studies at Bates, and I'm here to welcome you and kind of lay the foundation for what's going to be, I think, an exciting Skype conversation with Steven Brookman. So Peter's asked me to make a couple of announcements, and I'm going to read these so I don't miss any of them. We ask that you please keep yourself muted if you're not speaking. And we want you to know that the session's being recorded and it's going to be made available to the Bates community so that students that come to Bates after this and students that are currently Batesies that aren't allowed to or aren't able to be here tonight will have access to it. There will be a time to ask questions, and when we do that, please use the raise hand feature to indicate that you'd like to ask a question and wait to be called upon. Steven's joined tonight by Tori Westmoreland, his teaching assistant from the University of Southern California, who will graduate tomorrow, we think, from USC.
We definitely know she's graduating.
We do? Okay, are we sure?
Oh my
The
God.
conversation was before, we hope. So there we go. So let me introduce Steven real quick, and then I'm going to turn it over to him and let him talk to you. Steven Brookman was raised in New Jersey. He went to Colgate University for his undergraduate degree and then to California Berkeley for his law degree. He joined a law firm in Los Angeles, became a partner there, and about 17 years ago left that firm for CAA, Creative Artists Agency, which is the largest and most well-respected entertainment talent agency in the world. Steven is currently the co-head of motion picture business affairs there. For those of you who have not heard me talk about this before, he's made deals for the Avengers, the Hunger Games, the Hangover. He's worked with people that you know, like Robert Downey Jr. and Natalie Portman and my old classmate from Georgetown, Bradley Cooper. So he's involved in a lot of these different deals, and a lot of people in Hollywood would give an awful lot to spend an hour and a half with him, as we're going to get to do tonight. Before I turn it over to him, I just want to also mention that Steven is very committed to education. He is also a professor at the University of Southern California in their School of Cinematic Arts. He's been a member of our Bates Film Festival for both of the first two festivals and has been incredibly important in growing that organization and allowing us to give awards. And we're pleased to call him a member of the Bates family, where he's probably best known as Peri's dad. So I'm going to turn it over to Steven out in Los Angeles. Take it away, Steven.
Oh my God, that's such a buildup. I have so much pressure. I'm just going to drop the mic. I'm out. Okay, we're done. It's a great day to be a Bobcat. Now, anyway, hi everyone. Welcome to my kitchen in Los Angeles, California, and I'm really excited to be here. We have been sheltering in, like all of you, for, I think we're going on 9 weeks here in Los Angeles. I am accompanied here by Peri Brookman, who is next to me. Come on, just come on.
Hey guys.
You may know Peri, rising senior, everybody.
That's me.
Okay, shout out for Peri. She also said she needed to monitor me so that, you know, God forbid I go off track, she'll get me back on track. So the real highlight thus far of the sheltering in, I must say, was about a week and a half ago, Peri did a TikTok. So, because we're going to talk about the importance of content and where that sits and what's going on, and it's very timely. So she did a TikTok and happened to be my birthday, and she caught my wife. She filmed my wife, or she was helming, the dance party that was happening outside as we were having dinner. And so that went viral. And I don't know, you know, we'll talk, I know deals and everything in, you know, film and TV and streaming, but I'm not familiar with these numbers. So she told me she has over 120,000 views. And apparently, that's a big deal.
It's not.
Okay, now she just told me it's not. Okay, okay, not. Now, okay, she said we had this conversation 20 seconds ago. I, on the other hand, was part of a TikTok that she made in the house, and we only got 5,000 views. So I'm still kind of a little upset over that. Anyway, So welcome your evening, our early evening here, to our discussion about breaking into the entertainment business. And so what we're going to try to do is, and we have a fairly large group, so part of this will be interactive for sure. And don't be shy, just like we do down at USC, we try to create a real zone of comfort, and you should feel very comfortable here. By the way, I love Bates more than anything. I did the college tour with Peri, walked that campus, loved it, fell in love with it from the first minute, and it's so serene. So kind of like bring that into the room here, the serenity that we have on campus there. So beyond just talking about, we're going to talk about breaking into the entertainment business, but it'll even go a bit broader, where we will talk about kind of certain skills once you get into the entertainment business. And so it'll be a more macro conversation. So what I want to do here first is rewind a bit. And if you see me playing around, kind of gotten pretty good at the Zoom thing. And I'm looking, hold on, I'm going to go back to the broad view. Anyway, so back in March, I was meant to come to school with my wife, and we were going to visit Peri, and I was going to do this in your large theater, and there was going to be a big networking event. So clearly that all went sideways, as the world has, and we're all sitting here and facing a lot of great uncertainty. I mean, let's not have like the elephant in the room. So we're going to hit this stuff head on. And I think particularly for those who are here tonight, who are seniors and graduating, it's anxiety provoking, and so many questions about what it's like or going to be as you are entering into the job world, and things have been, put on pause. Some of you may have had your first jobs lined up or in the process of doing that. Anyway, so with all this huge uncertainty, we can bring it back to the entertainment business, a little more micro view of it all. So as most of you probably know, in terms of production, that has come to a grinding halt. And that happened mid-March. So all the movies that were in TV shows that were either in production, and those that were about to begin, they were put on pause. And the truth is, we don't know exactly when these shows will go back into production. We do know that certain companies, and I'm giving you this landscape before we jump in, we do know that certain companies like Netflix, for instance, and yesterday at my Wednesday morning staff meeting, we had Scott Stuber, who's head of film at Netflix, and his colleague, I think Lisa, he runs the major division there in terms of their larger films. And then Lisa runs their smaller division, which includes documentaries, and more modestly budgeted films. Anyway, they were talking about how they are already ramping up for some of these productions, which they're looking at, spots in whether it's Germany, Europe, Iceland, some of these places where they have, had a little bit more kind of, testing and all those things that will be necessary, because when production comes back, it's not going to look at all like it did before. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to a set, or you've done things maybe with theater at school, and it's a lot of people in a very small space. So the rules are going to change completely for what it looks like on set. There will be new protocols, quarantines, testing, all of that. Now, this may sound grim, but I don't want you to look at it that way for the purposes of our discussion tonight, because amidst this overlay, if you will, of uncertainty, what we have seen over the last 10 weeks, right, when everyone's been sheltered in, is a huge uptick in the consumption of content. And so, for instance, looking even at Netflix stock is it's not at an all-time high, but it's getting pretty close. And I know in the last couple of weeks, their subscription base has gone way up. That's a very good thing. All eyes are focused either on traditional content, call it network television, cable, or cable programming, but even more so, as we know, the huge increase in viewership and what people are really spending their time doing is they're living, and you are living in streaming land. So whether it's feature length or what I call television length content, so you're watching Netflix, you're watching Hulu, you're watching Amazon. We'll talk about Disney Plus, and then we'll talk about a couple new players are coming in a few weeks into that fold. And at the same time, what we're also seeing is, and this is all about content, is people have now are watching Quibi in terms of their, mini episodes, there's, which are 7 to 10 minutes in length. So you're watching short form content, you're watching YouTube. Oh, and of course, as I launched with earlier, you're watching TikTok. So, which I still, to be honest, have no idea how to get on. I don't even know what that is. I just know that Peri has shown it to me. So anyway, with all of this consumption of content, this is certainly, during this time in particular, it's proven to be a great distraction from what is, the 24/7 news cycle of what is complete disruption to our economy, to the health system, and huge sadness as we are living in this world of COVID-19. And I know for most of us, it feels like that's the only thing going on. That said, content, the watching of content, the viewership, what I've noticed and what I've heard from my students was, as we were getting into our year-end classes, end-of-year classes, was that there was a very interesting phenomenon going on, which was the viewership of content created what I would call the water cooler effect, albeit on a virtual basis, which is social interaction that occurs around content. So if we were at the office and we were binge watching shows and talking or looking at the new dynamics of a lot of these streamers where they're not dropping all the shows at once, they drop a couple episodes like Apple did with the morning show, that would create a collective around the water cooler. That is happening now, amongst you all. So it's just a very interesting social dynamic, but it plays right into what and where we're going here, which is, well, first, we're seeing a lot of changes in the distribution models, which are happening in real time. And, we saw that started several years ago with the disruptors coming in, and with now an onslaught of original programming coming out of them, whether it be Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, the major studios who are now are rolling out call it their internal arms for streaming. But here's the bottom line. This is all content and talent driven. And even in the moment where theaters have closed around the world, and there are serious questions about what that theatrical experience might look like in the near future, the world, and we just saw that with Trolls, which opened, I'm not even sure if it opened, but it went right to what's called premium video on demand. So all this uncertainty, but one thing is a constant, and one thing is certain, and that is content is king. And I think, and or queen. So yes, she's like, yes, so very just, yes, king and or queen and or king. And that's not going away. And in fact, it's been so embedded now in our fabric over this last couple of months that, once we get through, and who knows what that will look like, we're making deals now. It's all about content creation. And at the same time, it's all about talent, those people who we represent, because that's the equation. We're going to talk about the world that surrounds this, which are the opportunities for you in a couple minutes. And so what you need to know is, while the entire entertainment business, and I'm just focusing on that because we could go real broad, it's the entire world and economy and businesses, all kinds, are in a complete state of flux. Content is here to stay. So this kind of segues into tonight's conversation, which is, first of all, I want to have fun. We're not going to live in like the dark world of COVID because that's, bombarding us full time. And we're going to let's flip let's look at this with the glass half full, which are the opportunities, let's say, which are downstream. And so anyway, John already teed up, a couple facts about me. So I thought I'd just mention a few more, just moving stuff around, a few more factoids about Steven Brookman. So we covered where I grew up. We covered that I went to Colgate, that I graduated from Berkeley School of Law, or yeah, we used to be called Baltall. We can't call it that anymore. There's an historical thing there, so that we don't call it that. I, like a lot of you Bobcats, I was an athlete. And I mentioned it, I played college tennis at Colgate. I skied competitively. I ran the freestyle ski program at Stratton Mountain, which is not too far, well, maybe 3 hours from Maine. And as John mentioned, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but I also was a founder of what's called Colgate Entertainment Group, AKA KEG, which was their first national affinity networking group. And I started that back in 2011. And then I was also at the center of founding our, national networking group for the entertainment business, which you may have heard of, called BEAM, Bates Entertainment, Arts, and Media Group. And we talked about my teaching. The two classes that I teach at USC, the first is called Breaking into the Entertainment Industry, big surprise. And that has 100 students. So I did that fall of 18 and fall of 19. And then I also created the masterclass version, which got approved and I just finished up. And it has a very weird name, but I just call it Mapping Your Way to Success in the Business. So what I'm saying here is just so you can kind of get a flavor for who I am. For me, it's all about being a mentor and coach, which I not only have done, whether it was skiing or tennis. I consider myself a guide to navigating, folks who are your contemporaries into the business, and also helping them navigate once they get there. So, just briefly about my job, so you understand what I do a little more fully. So by trade, I'm what's called an entertainment lawyer. And as we go around the wheel of opportunity, I'll explain a little bit about what that means. So I graduated law school in '84. In 1987, I started at a boutique entertainment law firm where, I was making deals. And again, we'll get into that a little more specifically in a moment. And I worked with a lot of big talent back in the day, talent being actors like Arnold Schwarzenegger, a lot of the action folks back in the day, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Nick Cage. I worked with Johnny Depp. I worked with big directors. So that took me from 87 to 2003. And then in 2003, I moved over to CAA. And let me explain to you a little bit about my job in terms of what it means to be, well, I'm co-head of the Motion Picture Business Affairs Group, which is somewhat maybe a little bit of a misnomer now because we have a separate TV group for deal making, but not only do I do film deals, but I do TV, and it's the full landscape and screening, which encompasses both film and TV. So here's what my day looks like and what I do at the core of my job. So I'm a deal maker. The notion that, I'm an entertainment lawyer is, there's no law involved in what I do. So I'm at the center of structuring and negotiating the deals for our actors, directors, writers. We'll put a pin in that because the writers, I don't know if you've been following, but 9 months ago, all the WGA writers fired their agents. So that's an ongoing thing that's happening. And producers. And when I say I negotiate the deal, I am at the center of making the deal as it relates to their money, to their economics, meaning how much money they get paid, call it upfront, as their fees upfront, as well as call it the upside of their deals, and which is where it gets real complicated, which are, it's filled with many different components of whether you have a 50-50 split participation in profits or get bonuses based on box office. So my 24/7 day job is making deals, and plus getting you all into the other issues like credits and how they get credited on films, again, for crossing the spectrum of actor, director, writer, producers, and we'll call that just talent. John mentioned, a few of the clients with whom I work. So like you said, Bradley Cooper, Cate Blanchett, Kate Winslet, Rosamund Pike, Rose Byrne, Jimmy Marsden, Willem Dafoe, Emma Thompson, Sarah Paulson. I work with a lot of big directors. Denis Villeneuve, who some of you, there's a movie that will be coming out soon. He's been shooting, or it took quite a while to shoot, and he's in post-production, called Dune, based on the book series. And I work with Jordan Peele, who I'm sure you're familiar with, and we made a big deal about 7 months ago at Universal for him, where he's a producer there and has an exclusive arrangement. So I come into the picture in the deal making when we work on teams at CAA. The teams are made up of the agents, and I'm going to get to that in a second, who does what, and a business affairs, a deal maker on the team. And when a client says to their agent, I'm going to engage and I want to come on board as an actor or a director or a producer, then that's when I come into the picture to start the deal making process, and I'm there from finish to end. So, Tori, I think, so that's a little bit about Steven Brookman. And now let's move into our conversation of, we're going to start with opportunities. And I'm going to cover the gamut. It's not every opportunity that exists in the entertainment business, but I think I'm going to cast a wide enough net I'm going to go around, I call it kind of the wheel of opportunity. Okay, there it is. We have that up there. And what I'm going to do is talk about the various jobs, both on, if you look at the right side of your slide, agents, personal managers, entertainment lawyers, publicists, business managers. We call that's the talent representation side. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to look at the other side of the equation, which are the jobs at the studios, whether they be the traditional studios, meaning, the Paramounts and Disneys of the world, or at the disruptors, the Netflix, the Hulus, the Amazons, the D+. We're going to talk about jobs with independent financiers, production companies, film sales agents. And so anyway, let's start at the top on the right so you kind of have a real understanding of how this universe works. And the reason, just so you know, I highlight content and talent in the center of this, and I focused on this at the beginning of our conversation, is that's really the connective tissue for the entire landscape of the entertainment business and all of the jobs that are part of this, call it ecosystem, if you will. And, so we call them on the left side of the equation, those are the buyers and the studios. And on the right are the individuals who represent individuals. So first, let's look at agents. Let's talk about what agents do. And, some of you may know this, may know some of this, but for others, you may not. And truth be told, when I was an entertainment lawyer and worked at what it was a boutique entertainment law firm, of course I knew what agents did because we worked hand in hand with them when we were making deals, representing clients who we shared. But until you actually work at a talent agency, and I've been there 17 years now, and see what we do day to day, it's really, it's kind of an enigma, I think, if you're not on the inside to know what agents do. So here's what is at the heart of being an agent is, and this is what we do, we sell our clients to the buyer side, right? And when I say sell, we are securing their employment. So at the end of the day, the key thing, there are kind of two key components to what agents do. We secure them, their employment, and we negotiate their deals. So that's kind of really breaking it down on a simple level. Let's talk about how it gets more complicated, because it is, and let's talk about who the individuals are. So at the talent agent, and CA is a very large company. We have sports agents. I'm not talking about that tonight. And we have people who are in, brand licensing and all different kind of areas. We are just going to focus on the, traditional entertainment business, not music, which we have a whole music, department that's, that is involved with booking tours and things like that. Okay, so first we have our talent agents. Talent agents represent actors. And so they're reading scripts, they're finding material, and that's their job. And then, of course, agents are making the recommendations to their clients as they're sourcing, whether it's scripts that they've read, they're communicating with the studios and all the buyers out there, or we, particularly at CA, are communicating with one another, those who are the agents, not my job, because I don't get into the creative. It's limited to the deal making of it all. And so that's what talent agents do. They're representing actors. And it's not easy, as one can imagine. None of this is. Then we have our literary agents. And literary agents, they represent directors and writers. When we represented writers, I mean, we still do for those writers who are not members of the guild, the WGA, we're still able to represent them and make their deals. And they're securing jobs for them. So they are what's called covering the studios. They are seeing what jobs are out there for people to be hired, whether it's in television land as writers or directors, or in feature/streaming land. Another group that we have at CAA that plays a substantial role in our motion picture and television group, we call them media film finance. Now they're called media content. So they are responsible. They do two things. They're agents. They don't represent individuals in the sense of the talent group, but what they do is they represent very wealthy people who can be financiers. And some of these have made, some of these financiers, we're talking about folks who have financed companies like Alcon. I'm not saying these are the specific clients. Alcon, which was owned by, I think, Fred, I forget Fred's last name. He owned Federal Express, Annapurna. So Bill Polad, I think he owns a baseball team. He owns River Road, which made 12 Years a Slave. So one of the things they do is they represent the financier side. They also play another very important role where we represent films when they're finished, and they will sell the rights. So they're operating mostly in independent film land, meaning not studios, not your disruptors like the Netflix or the Amazons or the Hulus. And they put together movies just the same as we do for the studios. And ultimately they'll sell, they are the ones who go to the film festivals where, the Cannes, they would otherwise be there this week if it had not been canceled. So they sell what are called the domestic rights, meaning when the films get distributed in the United States and Canada, it depends how it's done. So they sell completed films or films that are in progress to a domestic distributor. And they also get involved we have people who work in the area of selling rights in the international space as well, meaning to international distributors who will distribute in their, respective territories. That's our film media finance group. We also have agents who are book agents, and they represent books. And what they do is they source material, and it's not just books, it's articles, periodicals, things like that, comic books, whatever. And they will source that material, and we will often, they'll take it to clients, and it's called packaging. So whether it could be, we package where we could represent a writer who's written a script, meaning not engaged by a studio, but on spec. So he's written a script at home, essentially, and hasn't been paid. And then we could put talent and connect that together. Those people in the book group, they take books. Sometimes we package it, or sometimes they will just set a book up at a studio and they sell the film and or television rights associated with that book. And then our group, the business affairs team, we are all we are, we are, we work with specific clients, at least in our the feature group, so it becomes very ongoing. So I've been working with Bradley Cooper, for instance, since he's been a client. So I made all his deals from Hangover to even before that. What about Steve and Yes Man? Okay, so the people in our group, work collectively and together, side by side with the agents, both the literary and the talent agents, and we're really considered the kind of quarterbacks of the deals. And agents are part of the deal process as well, don't get me wrong. So that's what we do. So that's kind of what agents do. Again, it's about finding them jobs, combing the turf, putting movies together. And of course, they're also into the career advice as well. So they are talking to them about scripts and next moves and whether it makes sense to do this or that. Point of entry for these positions is the mailroom. And and I'm going to talk about the mailroom later on in a little more detail. So that's how pretty much everybody starts. And once in a while somebody comes in, and it depends, whether if you're in maybe sports, it could work different. But if you are in the film TV business, you will start in the mailroom, which now includes a stint at reception. And there's a process which I can cover later on if we have time. So, but that's point of entry. So that's talent agent land. Let's talk about personal managers now. So personal managers they do things, it's very similar kind of in certain scope of what they do to what agents do. I would say the primary difference between personal managers and agents, it's twofold. Number one is they have fewer clients. So we as agents and the agency and individual agents have huge lists of clients. Producers seem to have much smaller lists. Their companies are definitely smaller than the big agencies such as CAA, William Morris Endeavor, ICM, Gersh, UTA, thank you, Peri, UTA. So I would say they're more boutique-y, but the other thing they do is, so they are giving career advice, they are reading scripts. They are not under California law, we're not getting into legal issues, but managers are not supposed to solicit employment, like seek out jobs and employment for them or make deals. The truth is they're involved with that, but generally speaking, if someone said, what distinguishes the two in certain, they're not allowed by law to do that because they're not a licensed agent. And the other thing that they can do, different from agents, is they can be producers as well. So you'll probably see out there, if you see certain movies and a big star or a big director, and you may see, if you knew the players, that you'll see, when they roll the credits, you'll see a producer who is also the manager of that person. So, and not only, it's not just a producer credit and title. A lot of these companies like Anonymous Films, Brillstein, it was Brillstein Gray, I'm trying to think. These large management companies who also produce are real, when I say real producers, Management 360, they come on board as creative producers and are with the process, not from the representation of that particular client who is involved in the process, but as a whole, as a creative producer. And it could be from start, or they might come in, people come into projects as elements in all different places. Anyway, that's personal management. Where do people start there? Generally speaking, and it varies a bit, I think some of the bigger management companies have mailroom-ish kind of programs, or you might start as an assistant to a manager. So that's your point of entry there. Next, entertainment lawyers, which I am by trade. So I worked at there are all types of different entertainment lawyers. I was what I call, and what the business would call, I was a talent lawyer. So we represented actors, directors, writers, and producers. There was no such thing. We didn't go to court. It was all transactional business in film and TV land back then, because there was no streaming land back when I started. And the entertainment lawyers are part of the team as well. They don't work within the agency, but they are our partners in crime. So when someone has an entertainment lawyer, that entertainment lawyer is part of the deal-making process with me. Not all the clients I represent have lawyers. A lot of them just rely on the business affairs folks. But when there is one, like for instance, and we spent months and months negotiating Jordan Peele's new deal at Universal, and he has an entertainment lawyer, Jared Levine, who's fabulous. So we are partners in that process, and we are part of those discussions with the studio folks, and we can talk about those in a second. Our counterparts at the studios, who are called business affairs folks, we are negotiating the deals with them. Anyway, those are the entertainment lawyers. And point of entry as an entertainment lawyer, well, first of all, you have to have gone to law school, and you probably would have had to pass the bar. Oh, and I'm going to just also throw out the notion of, on the representation side, that it's a commission-based business. So the way that we, as the representatives, make money, agents take 10%. This is in the film and TV group. It can vary in sports, it's different. But we take 10% of the deal. So all the money that they make from the deals that we make, whether it's their upfront cash or money that comes in when the film performs, if they have an upside for their deal, we get 10%. The same thing for managers. Most managers are on 10%. Entertainment lawyers operate, for the most part, on a 5% basis, meaning they're getting 5% of the deal. So if a client makes, $10 million, then, we make $1 million. If they have a manager, the manager makes $1 million, and the entertainment lawyer or the firm gets $500,000. So I know Peri's like, so there's a lot of money going out the door when you have these teams. The last player, oh, and by the way, I'm focusing on talent lawyers, but there are entertainment lawyers who represent the studio side, meaning it's called production work. So they can be engaged by the studio or the independent financier on a non-studio movie, and they'll draft the contracts once deals are made. After we've made the deals, we on the talent side don't draft contracts. We do review their contracts after we've made the deal to see that it's memorialized correctly. So again, I'm focusing more on talent land, but there are entertainment lawyers who work more in the corporate related area or in the finance area. So anyway, there is this whole world of entertainment lawyers. Next, business managers, another part of the representation, actually publicists. Publicists, their primary role with the talent is shaping they shape their image, they help control their image, they deal with the press, they interface with the press. Now in the world of so much social media, which is so important, and it's not only important to build the profile of the clients that way, but in the deal space, which I can speak to, there are often times when we're negotiating with the studios, and studios are numbers people, not in a pejorative way, but they're looking at their bottom line. And they want to make great movies, and some of them they want to be critically acclaimed movies that are awards type movies, though most of those happen independently in the independent space. But I will tell you, we have people now who, when we're making deals, create these decks, which are like, it shows the social media following. It shows all of this stuff out there that moves the needle, that brings viewership in. So anyway, the publicists are very involved in building that social media platform for the clients. I call them, brand builders these days. And where in the old days, maybe they would you'd see them on the red carpet and they would arrange their interviews when they'd go on, David Letterman or Kimmel or that. But now it's become a much broader type of position covering a lot more territory. And they travel to the festivals and do all that kind of thing. So with their clients, film festivals, that is, or TV kind of things like in New York, the upfronts, when they're announcing the shows that get picked up. Publicists get paid, and I'm putting this out there so you understand how this works, because when you go to and choose your career, you kind of want to know you definitely want to know how the economics work for those companies that with whom you're seeking employment. Publicists generally get paid flat fees. monthly fees. They're retained by clients. It could be all year round. It could just be when they have a movie, or a project coming out. That's their role. Next, business managers. Business managers are not at the center of what we do because, well, they're not on the creative side. But what they do, and most of them, business managers is, all business managers are by trade, I believe, they're accountants. And the business manager's involvement with the clients they're their financial planners. We don't get into that at all. So they do their tax preparation, they do their financial planning, they do their financial projections. A lot of these clients, they make a lot of money, and they're there to hopefully help ensure and guide them so they don't spend all of it. Because, it's a very volatile business, as we all know, not talking about our current moment of volatility, but it's volatile in the sense that careers go like this, they flatten, they go down, and then some of them go up. You never know. So business managers are there to give that kind of advice. And they'll come into the equation sometimes, in our deal making, not negotiating the deals as I do, but there are tax issues that may come up for clients who either live abroad and are shooting here, meaning international clients, or clients here who are shooting abroad, and we get tax advice for structuring that may go into the contract itself from business managers. Business managers get paid in a variety of ways. Some of them are on 5%. So now you can add that to the equation. So some clients might be paying 10 for an agent, 10 for a personal manager, 5 to an entertainment lawyer, and 5 to a business manager. And then their monthly retainer to the publicist. Okay, well, let's pivot to the other side of the content talent circle, or call it the wheel, is what I call it. And let's talk about these jobs that are on the buyer studio side. So first, we can start at the top. We can look at the traditional studios and TV and film studios. So we're talking about the Sonys of the world. We're talking, well, now it's a world of consolidation. We all know that Disney acquired Fox. So Fox doesn't exist anymore. That's been subsumed within Disney. Warner Brothers, there's been consolidation there. They were bought a couple years ago by AT&T. Universal still exists. Paramount, it was a very different universe years ago when I started. So we've seen this consolidation. We also have, the key players in the disruptor world, which we'll talk about in a second. So anyway, what are the jobs and opportunities at the studios? So, you could go in and be in the financial world and be part of their business planning, or a numbers person as it relates to, films being put together in the decisions to go or TV shows, whether or not to make a film or TV show, which, it's a very complicated process. They're looking at profitability. It's all about, the bottom line. Everyone these days, and now that there's been this consolidation and the studios are owned by mega companies, it's very different than 32 years ago when I launched in the business, where the studios were not owned by these larger companies, and they made more films, and it was more about the art, and they could have some losers so long as they had some winners. The way it is now, this is in studio land, it's all about the profitability. That's why we're seeing fewer movies made, and they're all at the studio level, and they're all tentpole or franchise films or based on underlying, notable properties. Here are the jobs. So, there are those business type jobs, finance, but I think for things that you might be interested in are the more creative jobs, such as you work with, you go into development, or, become a development exec, a creative executive. There's a term, CE. That's like when you're starting, and I'm not saying, because I'll tell you how you start, well, in those positions, and you'll probably that won't be surprising to you when we get there. So you've got development, creative executives who work on the films, developing them, the production of those. You have the marketing folks who work at the studios, and they're responsible for the marketing of the film. You have the distribution teams at the studios, because they distribute their films. So you have people working in that space. You have publicity folks who come in, whether before the film is released, and they're there for all the awards seasons, if it's that type of film, or just generally speaking, to get, they're doing all the, publicity, and they're working with the stars and the directors in terms of getting them on the shows and putting the word out there before the movie opens and after the movie opens, whether it be theatrically or drops on streaming. Point of entry, assistant or page programs at these studios. I mean, they don't have mail rooms as far as I know. So that's your point of entry there. And I'm talking about both film and TV studios. TV studios, the jobs are the same, development, creative execs, production execs, yada, yada, promotion, publicity, distribution. Oh, I'm going to take that back, distribution. The television studios are not necessarily, they're not the distribution platform. They actually are responsible for making the content. Okay, so I talked about just in this landscape, we talked about there are fewer movies getting made. Most of these are like these franchise tentpole films. We've seen the success of the Avengers, so the Marvel universe, the DC universe, then there's animation films out there. This is on the studio level. And now we segue into the studios who, got hip to the fact that they were selling their films in terms of streaming land. And for that piece of the exhibition or distribution, they were selling their films to Netflix or to Amazon. And then a couple of years ago, the Bob Igers of the world and the heads of Warner's and, the Steve Burks and at Comcast, they said, wait a second, we need to be in this business. This is where the business model is going. So, Comcast is now is launching Peacock, and Warner Media, I believe it's May 27th, launches HBO Max, their streaming service. Paramount doesn't have one, but they have CBS. Well, they're related. They have been distributing even still through, they do a very limited type of content, CBS All Access, but maybe we'll find that they grow into more of, their internal arm for distributing more types of, or different types of genre and content on their platform. So the good news is with all of these players coming into the business, it's created so many opportunities. So on the one hand, we've had that consolidation on the studio level, but at the same time, we've had this huge growth in the world of streaming. So I'm not going to do a retread because the positions are the same. So if you're making content, you're talking about the same kind of positions, both on the financial, finance side, but really on the creative side that exists at the studios, albeit, they're looking at different things. They have, when you're dealing with Netflix and Amazon, they're looking at their metrics. Those are subscription-based companies. So you have people who, they have experts in those who do that. Their marketing is different than a studio type film, which is not, a screen film. But generally speaking, those jobs are all the same. And I would imagine, because, you come in, I'm not sure if they're kind of, I don't think they have page programs, but they certainly, you start as an assistant to someone who works in a particular area. That's generally how you start there. And again, just to put a fine point on this world of the disruptors and the new players that have come in, they're spending billions of dollars on content. So the good news is they're here to stay, as I started the conversation this evening, and that's great for opportunities for all of you. Let's see. Let's talk just for a moment about independent financiers. So when I talk about independent financiers, we're talking about we're not in call it the studio ecosystem, but we're talking about more modestly budgeted projects. I'm speaking mostly to Featureland. And as I said before, a lot of these companies were started by very wealthy individuals. Annapurna, oh my God, I'm forgetting. Megan, it'll come to me, because her dad owns Skydance. And we've got Black Bear, which is, oh my God, I'm having a senior moment. Teddy Schwartzman from New York. And, you know, these folks come from either families that have a lot of money and they have financed some great movies in the independent space. So you have your positions there. Again, the creative positions and all that kind of stuff. Megan Ellison, there we go, had a senior moment. Yeah, her dad's Larry Ellison, there we go. So again, very similar in terms of to the studios, but maybe on a smaller scale, the same types of jobs and opportunities. Let's talk about film sales companies. Film sales, again, and they live in the international space. These are the companies who may be part of the complex financing structure for an independent film. And they also are responsible for selling the rights. And I know I mentioned before, we have a group also that sells rights internally at CAA. You know, we sell the domestic rights to films and some of the international. These film sales companies, they're out at the markets. I would say it's a much more, I mean, we're not financing the films, so they might finance films in part, and they are at all the film festivals. So I always said to the students, if you want to like travel the universe, obviously this was all before the world went sideways, and go to film festivals and hang out late at night at, you know, Hotel de Cap in Cap d'Antibes, or we're in the south of France, or go to Berlin, or go to Toronto, or go to Telluride. By the way, every place has a film festival. San Sebastian in Spain. Then you can go work at a film sales company. And, you know, a lot of very interesting jobs there. Again, they live in the independent film, and, you know, there's independent TV space as well. Okay, I have now finished the wheel of opportunity. So here, I think, is the big takeaway I would say to you, which is, and we talked about this in my class, which is, I used to call it the, what we called it at USC, the Cardinal A, which is the point of entry for most of these jobs is to be an assistant. You know, with the caveat, if you go to an agency, you start in the mailroom, but then you're on track, your first position after you get out of the mailroom, after, call it, you know, depends, 5, 6 months, then you go on a desk as an assistant. So there are a lot of challenges to that. First of all, you've gone to this great university and a lot of money has been spent, and you go into these jobs, they are not high paid, okay? And the tracks are very long, the career tracks. But they are the only way, and it doesn't matter who you know. Everybody starts in this position. I mean, we'll talk about networking. That gets your foot in the door. But the net of it all is you start, if you go into any of these jobs, you know, that's where you start as an assistant. And just to mention the mailroom, when people ask me, well, what do you think about going to a studio and starting the mailroom? And I say, and this is echoed by all of the guests that I've had down at my class and all the professionals in the business, starting in the mailroom is one of the best places to start. It's kind of the grad school or the master class, it's like getting your master's. So you're getting paid some money, you're actually building a great social network, but you are learning not only how to be a professional, because it's a very professional kind of thing. I mean, the mailroom, it looks like a mailroom, but they're doing so many different tasks, and they're going on runs, and they're reading, they're copying scripts, they're doing all these things. But it's, you know, it's a means towards an end, and you really need to start from that place. And I don't like to say that's the bottom. When I say let's call it, it doesn't work for me to do it with Bates, just call it the A, okay? The assistant aide to me, is really, think of it as being an apprentice. And that's where apprentices start. So I know for a lot of people, again, you come out of these great schools, and it's a little different, I think, if you've gone to Bates or some of these great liberal arts schools up, you know, on the East Coast, where you're just not at the center and the hub of the entertainment business. Whereas if you're, you know, if you go to SCA, you know, the film school at USC, or UCLA Film School, or Chapman, there's just a little more familiarity. Tongue twister. Thank you. With the fact that this is kind of the path there. So anyway, now we're going to move into our next topic of conversation. And I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to put on my hat, because I was told by John and Peter, this is my Bates. I love this. This is Bates Film Festival hat. So we'll put that on. Hold on. It's all about preparation. I've got all the preparation in front of me. So we're going to move. Hold on. Let me just shift a couple things here. Does anyone have any questions at this moment? And we have a lot of stuff to cover. And I know we said we have an hour and a half. We could. Peri's out. Thank you, Peri, for being here for me. Now I'm on my own. So I don't know if this is a good moment to ask some questions. Hold on. Let me just look at my program here. No, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. But does anyone have a question?
You have one question.
Okay, yeah, and then there'll be more time for that as well. Okay.
Here, I'll spot it.
Cool. Hi.
Hi. What's your name?
I'm Muskan.
Hi.
Bhatt.
Nice to meet you.
I'm a rising senior, I guess.
Uh-huh.
So I just had a small question. You were talking about all of the entry points of entry for all the different positions, but you never mentioned much for publicists.
You're right, I didn't. And the truth is, I don't know as much about that. I would imagine you start as an assistant, but that's a good question. Right. So, no, actually, I definitely know the answer. Because I always have publicists come down to class, is my guess as well. Yeah, you start as an assistant with a publicist. By the way, we haven't even touched on, again, there are so many, and I'm not even talking about the creative jobs here, because, like, you know, there may be people in the group tonight. Like, we're not here to talk about actors, director, how do you become a director? How do you become a writer, producer? You know, that's a different conversation. But I would tell you, it's all doable, but it's all hard. And that's the creative side. So this tonight is more geared toward, I would say, the business side of the sphere in which we operate. You know, people say, how do I get an agent? I'm like, I don't know. It's like a catch-22. You know, work begets work. You have work, you get an agent. How do you get work without an agent? I don't know. Anyway, so that's the publicist of it all, okay? Okay. We good, Tori?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. I'm going to show you a book now, because we're going to now get into our conversation about networking. And the reason we're going to spend some time on this is networking for me and for everyone in the entertainment business. I would say it's really at the foundation of it all, both, you know, networking as you're trying to get your job and secure your employment. Again, it's not just limited to the entertainment business. Let's not be, you know, it's, you know, networking is something that applies and it's way greater in scope, but we're kind of talking about that tonight. And it's also becomes key to when you get your first job, networking from within. So I thought we would talk tonight just about the skills and turn you on to some things to read that give you a real flavor for the importance and the networking process. So the first thing I'm going to show you, for anyone who's interested in going into the entertainment business, and this also happened to be, this is the book that we read in the class, the big class I teach with 100 students, Breaking into the Entertainment Industry. It's called The Mailroom, right? And it was published, I think, like 15, 16, maybe, wait, no, it's more, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And what it is it's the quintessential book about how one rises up in Hollywood. And the way the book is structured is the author, his name is David Renson. What he did was he interviewed 200 folks who had made their way into, and not necessarily all through, but started in the mailroom. And it's so interesting. It's an historical kind of approach. So it covers 7 decades, starting back in 1936. And it's just an in-depth look at what it took for these folks to get their foot in the door in this particular, you know, this is from the mailroom agency perspective. And some of these people, or most of these people who are in the book, have gone on to have incredible success. The the folks at my company who now run CAA, they all started in the mailroom. Some of them started William Morris, then came over to CAA. Everybody, David Geffen started in the mailroom. Michael Ovitz started in the mailroom. Ron Meyer, who's the co-founder with Michael Ovitz, he started in the mailroom. This is long before there was no CAA then. So anyway, it gives you that in-depth look, and the major overlay to the book is networking. I mean, it talks about a lot of things, like a lot of horror stories. By the way, the mailroom isn't like that anymore because we're living in a new era. People aren't having stuff thrown at them. That's not okay. They're not being yelled at. I don't know, maybe some people, whatever, not my style. I would never yell at anyone in the mailroom. My daughter, FYI, just as an aside, my older daughter works at CAA. She started in the mailroom, and all of her friends, you know, she's a real friend circle that has now come up. She works now for a senior talent agent at CAA, so she's on that track, that trajectory to be an agent. Anyway, networking. So let's talk about it for a second. Networking is kind of simple. It's what I break it down as it's cultivating a productive relationship for an outcome. And another way of looking at it is I call it connecting the dots, looking for a result. So I don't know, you know, this is a moment, I'll give you just a couple examples because the truth is there's a skill set to it, and we're going to talk about that in a moment, but we all network. And, you know, this is long before I showed up at CAA or in the entertainment business. You know, when I was working at Stratton Mountain and we were building our freestyle ski program that I coached, and I have an identical twin brother who happens to be an entertainment lawyer. And so we together ran the freestyle ski program at Stratton. We built a program by networking with the parents of prospective kids who were skiers at Stratton. So I was doing networking back then. You all network, and here, I'm gonna open up to the class. Think of like how, I wanna hear from you, just what have you done that you think has involved networking thus far in your life? Anybody? There are no wrong answers. This is a very safe space. We're all friends now. I can't see you all. So who's done some networking? Tell me what you've done.
I mean, just going to events and such, and I am generally a very talkative person, so I like going up to people and just start talking. Mm-hmm. I see that as networking, or even things like I worked at the Bates admissions office, and mm-hmm. while I was meeting a lot of parents, they seemed to like me, so they gave me their cards, and I was like, cool.
Networking. Yep. That's all networking. Anyone else who wants it? And you know, there's no pressure to speak. But if anyone, just put up your hand if you think of something. Look, Peri came back. So, you know, I would say even Peri's sitting here. You want to come in for the kid? Peri's going to come in as though she's a guest, a co-guest. Okay. I can't see my hair. I don't even know where am I? I can't even.
Here, do this.
Oh, okay. Where am I? Oh, there we are. Okay. So, Peri, I would say you went to camp on the East Coast in Vermont, and you go to Bates, and you left your friend group here. Tell me how you networked.
Well,
like at camp.
Well, at camp, I guess. I mean, I don't know. When I think of networking, I'm thinking, I guess like, yeah, meeting friends from across the country and mm-hmm. whatnot. But when I think of networking, I kind of think about like when I was working last summer at a production company, and I like I worked at Broadway Video, which is Lauren Michaels' production company. And like what I think about when I think about networking is like I became friends with a receptionist who like used to be an intern there also, but then like worked her way up and like she like interned like twice for them and then became the receptionist, and then is probably going to move on to like a different status within the office. And so like becoming friends with her was really great because she had a lot of great tips for like being in my exact position, and mm-hmm. also like great tips for like when I had to work on the phones and things like that. So that was really good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then look,
and like my boss, I guess, like
yeah.
becoming friends with like, like making friends with my bosses and like trying to have
connections.
Like a connection with them.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Because that is at the heart of the network is like creating that connection. And look, you did it as Peri also, you know, when you arrived at school at Bates, you know, maybe you had some friends who also went there that you grew up with, but you networked to create your friend group. I mean, I talk about networking. I'm a big, like, I'm a big food person. When I go to restaurants, I network to get a good table. So I become a really good customer. And I know everybody there, from, you know, the person who's at the front door to all the servers. And so that's networking. That way, when I want to get a reservation and it's busy at a cool restaurant, I get a reservation and I'm a regular customer and I'm like their friend, and we create that connection. I know what they do sometimes outside of the scope of that. So it's on many levels. Let's go now to, I'm going to talk about best practices in networking, meaning call it Steven Brookman tips, to-dos, not to-dos. Number one. So here's kind of the overall kind of the thing you need to think about is any connection, and let's put this in the context of you're looking for a job. And you know what, let's also put this in the context of you're at your first job as well, because so we're at an entertainment company, you know, let's just say you're at a studio, you're in the Page program at Paramount. So what you need to know is any connection that you make can be valuable, and never discount any person or connection. First of all, treat everybody with respect. I mean, that's a given. And I know it sounds like, oh, that's like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised in my business. It doesn't work like that. You treat everybody with respect, and you never know where that networking connection will lead. If you're meeting someone or doing it over email, be respectful of their time because people are busy. Be present. We're going to talk about this later. Read the room. So, and I mean that whether in a figurative or literal way. So you're at an event, for instance. Let's say you're at the Bates Film Festival, for no better, and you've got, filmmaker there, and you want to talk to the filmmaker, or speakers come on campus. You want to go up and make a connection. Obviously, if they're talking to someone, I mean, some of this may sound like it's just so obvious, but you'd be surprised. Okay, so you wait for that moment, and then you walk up, you introduce yourself. You don't barge in. So you pick that right moment. Then you make the connection. What you don't want to do is you don't make it about yourself, okay? You want to engage in a dialogue, and that, so that you can relate to them and so that you resonate with them after the connection. If you're going to an event where certain people are going to be, or you're set up for a meeting or an informational conversation, do your research, be prepared. And we'll talk about interviewing later, but you got to be very prepared when you're networking, because you're going to have, sometimes you're just going to have that moment. And gets to my next point, which is you want to make that networking connection, however it might be done, as what we call at CA, we do things that are, it's all about doing high impact work. So you want that moment with that connection to be high impact. Again, it doesn't mean it's going to turn into anything, but you don't want it to be like some random meeting and then they turn to the next and like, okay, whatever next, Now, that may be the individual and they may not listen and they just may be thinking about themselves. So you never know how receptive they'll be to it, but you try to do your best to make it high impact. Understand this, networking is hard and it's harder for some than others. So if you feel anxious, completely normal. You're putting yourself out there. It requires you to leave your comfort zone. And I will tell you this, if you're going to go in the entertainment business, you better be prepared to leave your comfort zone, because it is not a feel-good business. It's fun in the sense of, it's great to be part of putting projects together, whether you're on the creative side, the deal-making side, seeing the final product out there. So there's that kind of, call it fun to it, and it's social, it's about people and connections, but it's a rough business. And people are challenging, and people have huge egos. So And so that all takes getting out of your comfort zone. That's a huge part of networking. Follow up. If you've made one of those connections and it's right, just depends. Like certainly if you have an informational chat with someone, whether over the phone or an interview, you send a thank you note right after. You send an email. It's actually nicer to send a formal, I know a lot of people don't believe in that or even know what a stationery is, but, send a handwritten note. It actually goes a long way, more so than an email when someone's getting all these emails all the time and they're like, delete, delete, that's nice, thank you. Okay. So I would go with the handwritten note. Don't overthink when you're making your connection, being present, but don't overthink. And know that every connection is not going to trigger that particular outcome that you might have in mind. So don't get disappointed. Networking is a constant thing. No, not only as you're breaking in, but when you have broken in. And most importantly, and we'll talk about this later, is be your authentic self. Don't put on an act. I will tell you, authenticity is key, whether it's in the entertainment business or any business that you might go into, or just life in general. You live within your own skin. Be yourself. Don't try to be someone who you're not. And guess what? Everyone isn't going to love who you are, right? I mean, look at Peri. I'm mediocre to Peri on a good day, right? So, and Nicole sometimes likes me better, whatever. No, but what I'm saying is you're not going to be liked by every person. It doesn't work like that out in the real world. So just know that everyone isn't going to warm up to you. Big deal. Who cares? I use this expression with Tori. We always say, next, because you just got to move on. Okay, let's just put in terms of networking, I want to bring it back to Bates for a second, and then we'll move on to our next topic of conversation. So it's definitely harder if you're at Bates to do a lot of the entertainment networking, unless maybe you live in Los Angeles or New York and you have, or you just may know people. By the way, we did an exercise with my first class, the breaking into the entertainment class, where they did networking exercise, 1 week, and then they wrote about it. But over Thanksgiving, Tori, don't you remember? One of the exercises, and I just made this stuff up. This is the first class that I taught. And I was like, wow, maybe at Thanksgiving, people should just try to do some networking, and you never know what comes out of it. And I had no idea whether this was just going to fall flat, and people would be like, what are we doing here? I go by Prof S, Professor. I don't like Professor Brookman, so I'm Prof S. I changed my name midway first semester I taught. So I thought they'd say, oh, Prof S, this was lame. Here's what they did. They came back, they wrote about it, and you would be surprised. I was actually shocked. And by the way, I keep it real simple in class. This assignment was easy. They wrote half a page about their network connections. And they said, I was at the dinner table and I talked about this and yada, yada, yada. And my mother and I live in Chicago. And I had no idea that her brother was best friends with the head of, X studio or this place. So anyway, it's definitely harder if you're at Bates. But here's what you do. When you have the Bates Film Festival, like we've had, that's a great networking opportunity right there. It's right in your backyard, right? Connect with alums. The Center for
Purposeful
Work, I got it right. I had to make sure. Okay. The Center for Purposeful Work is a place to go. That is, they will create your connectivity with alums. And, I'm working with them, and we just launched, Bates Entertainment Arts and Media Group. We had a big first event last March out at CAA, and alums came, and I'm working with the school to hopefully create a more, call it a database, which then that is easily researchable. And that would probably sit with, the Center for Purposeful Work. So use that. That's a great place to start. Okay. Next, I want to talk about mentor-mentee relationships. And I want to transition into this because, first of all, I think it's always great, again, whatever you might be doing, whether it's in the entertainment business or otherwise, to find a mentor. Some of you may have mentors already. Could be your parents, it could be a relative, it could be a friend, it could be a professor. So it's really, I would say, and this probably applies more so once you land your job in the entertainment business, finding that mentor, because here's what they do. It's about the, and networking can lead to finding a mentor. So it's just this critical component about learning, being trained, building that support system within a very challenging universe, because you will hit speed bumps. You will cry. Trust me. I watch my older daughter. I watch all of her friends who I know at CAA. And I'm not saying they're walking around the hall in tears. They all break, okay? Because it's hard. Whether you go on a run to deliver a script and you go to the wrong place, or you're an assistant, and that moment when you set up the wrong meeting and the client misses an appointment for an audition, it's not a very feel-good moment, but it's really nice if you have a mentor and you can go in their office and close the door, or, call them and say, uh-oh, I need your help. I made a boo-boo. So the key to these mentor relationships are first finding them and sustaining them. And so first I'm going to ask an intellectual question to the class. I know you're like, Steven's going to ask an intellectual question. So does anyone know the answer to this question? It's not a trick question. Who can tell me where the term mentor kind of emerged? And if you can't, if you're not able to figure it out, I'm going to give you a hint. Does anyone know? Don't look it up. That's cheating. We don't cheat. No Googling, because I'll know. I'm going to look. If you're looking down, look in the screen. Okay, does anyone have any clue? Great. I'm glad we were all go to Bates. By the way, nobody knew at USC either. Okay, here's just an interesting thing. Fabulous. Go Bobcats. So mentor, it's, here's where it emerged. It has its basis in Greek mythology. Mentor, there was a person in Greek mythology, Mentor, he was the friend and advisor to Odysseus or Odysseus, I'm not sure if I'm getting, who was the king of Ithaca. And Mentor helped raise, is it Odysseus? Odysseus? Yeah, I think it's Odysseus. Mentor, huh?
Odysseus.
Odysseus, okay, thank you. So Mentor helped raise Odysseus' son, Telemachus, while Odysseus was off fighting the Trojan War. Circle back to USC, where the Trojans, Tori, fight on, Trojans. And Mentor became the teacher, the coach, the counselor, and the protector of Telemachus, and they built this relationship of trust. So, simply put, that mentor is that trusted guide or counselor who can be the source of wisdom, teaching, guidance, and support. And what I thought I would pivot to for a moment, so it's not just Steven Brookman rambling on, I'm going to ask Tori, my TA, who actually, just to give a little she'll give the backdrop, because I call Tori in life, this is your moment, Tori. Trust me, we do this in class all the time, when we went remote, when we were there. So Tori, I call mentor number 4. Let me explain what that, mentee number 4. And I've had, over the course of my career, lots of mentees. I mentee tons of people at CA and my students and all of that. The reason she's number 4 is there were 3 primary mentees before Tori. One was a lawyer at my first entertainment law firm. And he worked there. He was an intern before he went to law school, and then he went to law school. So I took him under my wing and he worked with me. Mentee number 2 was an assistant of mine at CAA who was a lawyer. And when, at CAA, we in business affairs, it's not a mailroom track. It's very different. So we're hiring people who are entertainment lawyers for this job. But a lot of the assistants want exposure to the entertainment, the deal-making side of it all, and they start as assistants. So 2 of my recent assistants, one was 6 years ago, Joseph Rodriguez started on my desk. He graduated from UCLA Film School, and he did an incredible job. He got promoted after a year, business affairs executive. I'm actually seeing him tomorrow night, social distance, I'll say hello. And he now works at Paramount in business affairs. And then a woman, Alex Kaplan, who's come in as a guest to class, she was mentee number 3. She was also my assistant, went to Loyola Law School, and she was a star. And after a year, she got promoted and now is killing it as a business affairs executive. Tori, and here, let's put the spotlight on you. Tori, You'll talk about how we met. She was a student in my first class, and I call her principal mentee number 4. And we're going to hear from Tori as to what makes it work, what qualities does she look for in a mentor. I'm actually putting myself at risk here because she's about to say you have none of them. And then Tori, I want to hear from you about like what makes that relationship work. So why don't you just give the backdrop to this?
Okay. Sure. So how it all started, basically, I was in the first class that Steven taught at USC, and we used to have to, as a class, submit questions before guests would come in, and he would just pick whatever questions he thought were like most appropriate for the guests, and he'd call your name during class to ask them. So one day he called out Victoria, because that's my full name, and he asked Victoria to ask question number 1 that I had submitted, and when I stood up to ask it, he looked at me and was like, wait, Victoria is not your name. Like, I swear you have a different name. And I was like, oh, I go by Tori, so that's what I put on my name tag, but you could call me whatever. And so asked my question, that was done. And then the next week, he called me out and said that I was the person who yelled at him for calling me the wrong name. And I was like, I would never, ever yell. Why would I do? No. And so from then on, we sort of would make jokes about that. And I knew he wanted to go to a game day at USC. And so I reached out and asked if he wanted like us to set up a whole tailgate situation on campus where we cooked and everything. And from there, like the rest is history. We just continued with that relationship. And then he asked me to be his TA, and I did that for the whole year.
Two classes. So you should
Right.
say Tori TA not only the 375 breaking into the entertainment business, fall of 19, call it the masterclass version we just finished. So she's been stuck with me for a whole year. So what do you think makes it work, Tori? And how does it work for you? Like, talk about the qualities. You don't have to actually be speaking about me. Just talk about qualities in general, if I don't actually have them anyway.
Right. No, I think, well, first of all, I think there needs to be like a mutual commitment to the relationship. Like, for example, like on my part, I would, be doing anything. I could be studying for another class or like at a party or whatever I would be doing as a college student. And if Steven reached out and needed something, I would drop what I was doing and answer. And like, you have to, be committed to learning from that person, because you have to realize that they don't owe you anything, and they're there like, because they want to help. And as Steven said, he like sees himself as a mentor for a lot of people, but it's not just something that I deserved. And so you have to like take it with gratitude and take it seriously and like be really responsive. Don't be afraid to like speak your mind, and be open to, criticism and like constructive criticism. And I just think, there are a lot of like, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think Steven was really open to listening to my side of the story when we were like planning the class, or all of that when it came to the syllabus and came to like research for questions for different guests coming in. And I think that having that level of comfort with the other person is key. And just, for a mentor, someone who's sort of an open book in terms of their career, willing to let you observe from them. And you also have to have that level of curiosity and interest in the things that they're doing. And so, from there, just being open to answering or asking questions and have someone who's willing to answer them. And I think that those relationships sort of form organically and should happen naturally with us. Like at the start of the semester, when I was in his class, I would just sit in the back of the room, like didn't participate that much because I was kind of intimidated by Steven. It was a really big class, but I think, those things sort of happen by fate, and like we have like personalities that mesh really well together, and it's something that just flows, and you have to be willing to be proactive. It's not just going to come to you, but as those doors open, I think it just works, and you'll realize it when it's coming. You'll realize when you've found someone who can be that person for you, and you have to be willing to, teach them as well. It's a mutual, like, not just a receiving relationship, but a giving relationship as well. And you have to just be open to all of that. And again, not disregarding people who come into your life like thinking that you can't learn from them. You can learn something from everyone, like, and everyone can learn something from me. We all have different perspectives, and we have to be respectful and knowledgeable of that. But yeah, just being open-minded and knowing that you can find those people wherever, which is something that Steven touched on, but, you know, not just in the workplace, but in the classroom, wherever.
And it's like, and I think Tori, that was, you articulated that spot on. It's about, you know, there's like this reciprocity, and you know, and a lot of people, and just to be honest, and we're going to move on to the other stuff. A lot of people people are busy. So I would say I'm more inclined, or have been way more inclined, to be a mentor because I grew up coaching skiing and tennis and yada, yada, yada. A lot of people, and you'll find this, won't take that on. It takes a lot of time. And and Tori did it better than anyone, this reciprocal mutual respect that we have. And we became seriously like the most well-oiled machine. And I can't tell you how much time, I mean, you know, we spent 15 weeks the first semester and 16 weeks the second semester. We had to pivot the last 9 classes to doing this remote. Never had done that. So anyway, that's kind of like just the world. And the reason I focus on this so much, and again, I bring in a lot of guests. We probably had over 125 guests in my 3 classes come in from all facets, you know, representation side, studio side, writers, directors, actors, all that. So many people talk about finding that mentor-mentee relationship. So I would say, don't worry about it if you don't have it, but definitely keep it in mind when you start in the business or whatever business you start in. Next, thank you, Tori. So I want to talk about interviewing and resume and cover letters, and we're just going to spend just a couple minutes on the resume cover letters, but the interview thing I think is really important in the entertainment business, because when you interview, we are, as a group, who are who interview people, and I've coached a ton of people who have interviewed and have come into the mailroom and gotten jobs, or other jobs, or students of mine who have, who have sought out internships, not CAA. And so I like getting into the whole interview coaching of it all. But I want to break it down for you because it's so critical. It's, your resume gets you over the first hurdle, but the interview at these companies, you have to remember, this is such a personal business that there has to be a connection, right? So there is a real art to interviewing. And I thought, I'd just go through the kind of highlights and how I look at this. And some of this might seem obvious to you, but again, it's not. Or you'd be surprised is what I want to say. So I first look at the interview like a sporting event. And as a former tennis player, when I played at Colgate, and I grew up, I played the USTA, the tournaments. So I'm very competitive, but it's about being in the zone. And, there's mental prep. So here's kind of my breakdown of the interview process. So 3 components: substantive prep, mental prep, and then there's the actual interview. So let's go through this. The first thing that you need to do is you got to set the table in your mind before you're going into that interview with what I call the schematic as to all the points in the perfect universe, and if it could be scripted, which it's not, that you would want to touch upon so that you make an impact during that half hour or however long it might be. At the same time, you need to understand interviews, and you've done them, so I'm not telling you something you don't know, but I'm not sure a lot of you have interviewed for entertainment positions where, like I'm telling you, it's a tough, even when I'm the interviewer, well, I'm not the interviewer, I'm the interviewer, I do it. We've got a very challenging thing going on in the room, and I am pressing people to see if they're doing critical thinking. And when we get to these other points, all of this stuff that I'm talking about, I can tell whether someone has kind of checked the boxes. Okay, so you're going in, you got to know obviously why you're seeking that particular position and opportunity. And I would say with specificity. You got to think about what makes you a great candidate and create that nexus between yourself, and this is all this preparatory work I'm talking about, not we're going to get to in the room. That preparation, create that nexus between yourself and the company and the position that you are seeking. And this holds true when we get to the cover letter. I'll talk about that. Think about what sets you apart from other candidates. Don't think about doing a retread of your resume, because the person who's interviewing you has your resume right in front of them. Doing your homework. I cannot tell you how important this is. So you got to roll up your sleeves, and you need to know as much as you can about the position and the prospective employer. Here's how you do it, okay? Again, some of this stuff might seem obvious. You'd be surprised. I have people call me and they said, I'm interviewing at CAA. I want to be prepared. What do I do? And I'm like, are you serious? So, okay, read as much as you can about the employer. Know all that you can know. You don't have to be an expert. You don't work there. You're not the CEO, okay? But read as much as you can. Read about their historical. If they've been around for a while, that would be like an agency or a management company or the studios. Good to just know that, because here's what you want to do by the time you walk in the interview or do it, via, remotely. You want to bake that stuff into your fabric so that it's like going on the tennis court, or I'm as a skier, the downhill skier, they have walked the course before they've skied, or the slalom skier, and they have visualized the whole thing. You need to do the same thing for an interview. Knowing that, unlike in skiing where the gates don't move, in the interview, it moves around because it's fluid. Connect in advance with anyone you may know who works there currently or who has worked there previously. Tap their brain. Ask them what it was like when they did their interview. Like I said before, you don't need to be an expert about the company, but you gotta be facile with the broad brushstrokes of what they do, who they are, what their culture is. Next, and this is, I will tell you, this can be the death knell of you in an interview. It definitely is for me when I'm on the other side of the table, and at that moment when I say, so do you have any questions? And God help that person who says, nope. For me, that's the end of the interview. It's over. I don't care how great they've been. How can someone go into an interview without having questions? So here's what you do. You come prepared with, I always say 3 questions. You don't need more, because you never know if you're going to get around to, it might be 2 questions. Come prepared though with 3. Know your audience, know who you are talking to. When I say that, if you're interviewing at a talent agency for the mailroom and you're talking to someone in HR, you're not going to ask the interviewer, hey, how do you sign clients? What's that like? Because the head of HR is not a talent agent. So again, think about that. Just some ideas, questions about the company's culture, opportunities that exist for, if it's an internship. So if you're going as an intern, talk about like growth. You might want to ask a question. I always like to see maybe a more conceptualized intellectual. When I say intellectual, rather than the practical about the company or the employer or the job path, I like to see something macro about maybe the entertainment landscape and what the company's doing in that space. And it just depends who you're speaking with, because you also have to be prepared for that question. When you go to these companies, they'll say to you, hey, at CA, it's an across-the-board question if you're trying to get into the mailroom. Hey, so tell me about something that you found interesting recently about CA, or what's going on in the entertainment community, out there. And I'm telling you, if you sit there and look up in the air and have no idea, you're done. Okay. Here's the next thing, practice. This might sound like you might be looking at me and saying, what are you talking about? Believe me, when I come and teach, it's all about the preparation. I do a rehearsal. I probably rehearse this, or when I go into class, I do run-throughs, okay? Do a run-through of your interview. Again, go back to that schematic that if you could paint, if you had this easel in front of you and you could paint like with the broad brushstrokes of what it would look like, go through that and visualize it, because you're not there to navigate it, but you've got to be there to be part of the navigation of it. Okay, so visualize that, practicing. That could be with a friend. I've worked with, I've done mock interviews with people who I'm coaching, and I'll just start asking them firing questions away at them. Don't over prepare. Don't look like it's scripted. Your answers need to be organic, and that comes from the preparation. If it looks scripted, it's obvious, okay? Take a few minutes before you get in there, take a deep breath, get yourself centered, get focused. Now let's talk about the actual interview. Whether you're coming online like this, or you're sitting down in a room, get settled, get yourself comfortable, find your body position that's gonna work for you. I know this sounds like Steven Brookman is in the weeds, but it's really, there is an art to doing this. The key to a great interview when you're in the room is you listen to the interviewer. So as much as you have your visual schematic, you follow their lead. Remember, they're the interviewer. You are the interviewee. So follow their lead. Listen. You need to have your listening ears on. Take your time. Don't feel like or feel as though you need to spew out an answer. They might ask you a complicated answer. They might say, I will, I'll ask broad questions like, tell me something about you, the most like high impact thing that's not on your resume that you want me to know about you. And it doesn't have to do with your schooling or the 97 internships that I'm looking at on your resume. Like, I want to hear something. And someone could say, I'm really into food. And I'm like, wow. And then that interview, I've done this where the interview can go on for an extra 20 minutes. We talk about food. We talk about the world of watching food shows. Anyway, listen to your interviewer, right? I always use this acronym, LIM, less is more. Answer the question, move on. Be your authentic self. Again, don't act. Be yourself. If you are not right for that person, you could be interviewing for an assistant position with the boss rather than HR, like you would start at an agency or maybe a studio. Just be yourself. If it's not the right fit, it's no different than when you apply to college. I always believed when both my older daughter went to Colgate and Peri landed at Bates that I always believed that they'll land at the right place, which is the right fit. Whereas some, and I don't want to, some people, and whether it's the applicants or the parents, it's about, well, they need to go here. No, it typically works out. And I think authenticity gets you there. Don't oversell yourself in the room. Don't try to agent the interviewer. That's a bad one. Because believe me, I've had people do that with me and I'll literally look at them in the room and say, stop agenting me. By the way, at the same point, my internal narrative is it's over and done. Don't interview the interviewer. I've had that. They're not, I'm not there, or they're not to like ask me, well, tell me about your career. I mean, it's one thing if they ask some questions, but it's not I'm not being interviewed. We talked about read the room. You can be funny. I like to keep it light in interviews, and it'll be intense and then it'll be light. It's not manipulative. I'm very direct. So if that person has a nice personality, then if you have a sense of humor, you're not going to yuck it up, but be yourself so they can see that you can laugh. Don't be thrown off course. This happens with people. Don't get in your head. Don't start thinking sometimes, when you're there, you're like, oh, Christ, I didn't answer that question right. And then you start getting in your head and the interviewer doesn't like me. Then you're like thrown out of your zone. Stay the course, be an athlete, tennis player. You missed the point, you move on to the next. If you're living in the last point, you're gonna blow the next one. So you gotta keep moving forward, and everything doesn't have to be perfect. So, but you're gonna try to be the best version that you can be. Don't ask about next steps. Let them tell you what they are. And always send notes afterwards. Again, handwritten note. Thank you so much for taking it, whatever. Such a pleasure, blah, 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 blah. Okay, last but not least, cover letter and resume. 2 points, resume, 1 page. I'm not gonna, okay, seriously, 1 page. Nobody wants to read a 2-page resume. I don't wanna have to flip a page. And I don't need to see a billion sub bullet points as though literally I'm going to go back to my CEO or as though like you're trying to tell me you did something as an intern when like I know what interns do. They don't do that much, okay? And then sometimes you'll see someone try to like lay it out there and they're spewing and I did this and I like it's as though like they wrote the damn script to get the Academy Award for a movie when a script came across their desk. I'm like, no, 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 no. Just the highlights. Again, things that highlight what you've done, general, experience. That's what they want to see. That's what I want to see. And I know this sounds funny. Tori, remember in this last class, they had to submit their resume at the beginning. And so I don't grade them. I looked at them actually before. I didn't get back to anyone. They were all pretty good. But a couple students had font literally that I could not read. Okay. If you have font that people can't read, that means you have so many bullet points and things going on that if someone is looking at it, if I'm looking at it, I'm like, next. I can't deal with it. So make it font that people like myself who wear glasses, with their glasses, can read. If I need to do this and start following it, then it's literally bye-bye. Okay. Cover letter. Here's the thing. Not everybody requires it. The best cover letters are those which kind of tell a story. It's not a retread of your resume because it accompanies the resume. So for me, and I've given this advice to Peri, and Tori wrote a great cover letter when Tori applied when you did your internship, and we used it as an example in the class and Tori worked at the Pantages Theater, and she wrote the greatest cover letter that started with, when I was little, I started to go to Broadway. I've been in love with Broadway shows, da, da, da. It created that nexus. It jumped off the page and it engaged me. It was like watching a film, telling a story. So tell a story, albeit brief, to get the attention of that person who's going to see it, and then they'll move on to the resume. And I will tell you, if you score points on your cover letter, you're already going into the next round, meaning the resume part, where someone's like, oh, they've got this. They already have the experience. Let me see what they've done. Okay. Last slide. We're just about done, then we can ask questions. So I'm going to put up, this is a slide that we created, which, just so you know, it's very much, a lot of it is borrowed from a slide that we use, which is my mantra that we created for my first class, and we use it in my second class at USC. We, of course, tailored it for the Bobcats. So, okay, there it is. So here's what we're going to talk about to close. Choosing the right path to one's career, because it's not easy. It's, it's hard to make those choices. It's hard to know what you should do when there are so many opportunities out there, again, whether it's the entertainment landscape or otherwise. So let's first look at this moment in which we're living. We are operating in a very, very challenging landscape, right? Tons of uncertainty. Jobs are evaporating. People are being furloughed. People are being fired, right? Seniors who have been hired, their start dates are being pushed, some indefinitely, or, their jobs have gone away altogether. That's the moment we are living in now. This will not be forever. So what I would first suggest is, as you're thinking about your career, for those of you who are seniors and rising seniors, or those who might be watching, I don't know if there are any alums in here who are thinking about making transitions in their career. First, keep away from all the noise that's going on now, because we're all getting bogged down in it. And, you are who you are at this point, and all that's going on here doesn't change you. So try to stay centered. Think of yourself like as the mountain. This is the storm. And by the way, the mountain always survives the storm. So you will weather this storm. Stay on course. Don't let this distract you. You can only control that which you can control. You can't control those jobs. You can't control whether it goes away or when it comes back or if it comes back. You can just control how you respond. I don't like to call it reactivity. It's how you're going to respond. So let's just talk quickly about what I think are the ingredients, the key ingredients, again, borrowing from my class mantra, for choosing your career path. First, we spend so much time in my class, and in fact, mindfulness is baked in, and I don't know if you're all familiar with that. being present, being aware. It's a huge part of the introductory class and the master class. Be first, before we get to that, be your authentic selves. We've talked about that, whether it's the interview, your resume. If you are not authentic with yourself, right, then you will have a clouded, distorted view or perspective of what you want to do, and you won't be able to get there. So just be yourself. That will give you clarity. Number two, and this really gets to the mindfulness that we spend so much time on in the second class, where in fact the students read a book about, it's the seminal quintessential book on mindfulness, written by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, who created mindfulness. He's out of the, he's a doctor. He worked at, or he maybe still does at UMass. He's genius. And so he created the whole notion of mindfulness, which was first geared towards those people who are suffering either from chronic illness or terminal disease. And then it morphed into the notion of being present and being part of our, I mean, every athlete does it. It's really now it's out there and it's pervasive, mindfulness. So, it's in terms of choosing your career path, live in the moment, because that's first of all you have. And when you live in the moment and you're present, particularly now when there are all these distractions, this will allow you to listen to your inner voice, because that's how you're going to get to making these choices. You're all smart. You're all at Bates. You've been through life. No one has perfect judgment, but you have judgment. It is part of you at this age, right? And the only way to use your judgment, I think, at the best level is being present. Listen to your inner voice. Go with your gut. It's usually right. Let that guide you. Next. Now I'm borrowing from Bates, from Purposeful Work. Align who you are with what you do. When I look at Purposeful Work, and we talked about this when we had our big event, launching Being, I think you have a whole curriculum about this, and you have your center for this. One of my takeaways was you play to your strengths. So when you're choosing your career, think about your strengths. Don't try to go against the grain. That probably won't work out. But at the same time, know that your first job is not your final job, okay? And then we talk about this in my class, which I think is so important, in life, and that's, we're all pretty lucky, notwithstanding what's going on. And, I know plenty of you out there and your families, we're all affected, right? Practice gratitude. Again, this comes from mindfulness and self-care in particular at this moment. But be grateful for what you have. Be grateful for this Bates education. Be grateful for what you've had. And I know for you seniors, it sucks. There's not a real graduation. You all had to leave campus abruptly. All of you, Bates, every school. And I'm not going to tell you that's okay. But be grateful for what you have and practice self-care. Take care of yourselves, both mentally and physically. And I think if you follow these guidelines, because there's no magic to choosing a career. And like I said, your first job is not your last job. Careers happen over time. There will be bumps, speed bumps, who knows? God knows. Life happens. You have your career, your professional career, and then life happens at the same time. Who knows what will be thrown your way? So anyway, here's to the Bobcats. That's all I've got. I know I went probably longer than I was supposed to. I had a big program, but now I would like to open it to questions, to the floor. So if you have questions, fire away. First, I want to say thank you to everyone for being here tonight. It's really feel grateful, and it's a privilege to be able to come in and talk to you at Bates. Hopefully next year, I will be on campus and I'll be doing a version of this or something, or I'll be at the Bates Film Festival. That's the plan. So anyway, questions?
Yeah, we've got a question from Eric.
Hi.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
So my question was regarding the networking process. And mainly, so I've been out of Bates for a year. I graduated 2019, and I've done a couple things in the film industry trying to figure out where I want to go. And one of the things I've struggled with is figuring out if it's appropriate to, while networking with, say an alumni from Bates or a friend of a friend, one of those types of connections, whether it's ever appropriate to just come out and ask for a job. Because it kind of seems like in this industry, there are some positions on indie films where you can get yourself into that position where it might be appropriate, but there's other places, maybe with the more studio stuff, where it doesn't quite feel as appropriate.
Okay, so here's my answer. I would not, as part of the networking, come out and ask for a job. I think networking, first of all, it's a building block, right? And a lot of what we spoke about earlier, it's making those first connections, that connectivity first. So the last thing, and I literally think that would also be that would not go well.
Yeah.
Now, and depending upon who you're networking with, hopefully, in the best version, it leads to, hey, here's my email. Feel free to follow up with me. Maybe we can sit down and have a cup of coffee. That's what you do, because networking needs to be organic. If it is forced, it will turn out to be a disaster. So you got to go with the flow. Again, it's like reading the room and navigating that interview. So you've just got to go with it, and you got to be patient, because, and again, not every networking connection turns into anything, but it might, or it may not turn into anything then. And literally, if you make a high impact, if you have a high impact moment, it could literally be a year later. Believe me, I've met people, like someone, I'll be like, God, I remember I met that person. That's who we should hire. So that's how, don't look for instant gratification and don't ask for it.
Great, thank you.
All right, we've also got a question from Nicholas.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I'm Nikki. I'm a member of the class of 21. I don't know if Peri is still around.
Here.
Let's go. Yeah, we're holding down the fort. I just have two really quick questions. The first is, I'm a theater major at Bates right now and a double major in psychology. And I was wondering if a bunch of people who did kind of like more creative things in like college, high school, maybe were like thinking about being like an actor, a dancer, director, end up going into the actual business side of like entertainment like you're in.
Yes, that's a really good question. And a lot of people do, because look, I would never dissuade someone from doing what they want to do. I will also be very honest and say, if someone wants to go be an actor or director, by the way, nothing's easy, okay? No career anywhere is easy. So, but acting is really hard. So what I would say is, a lot of people, and I saw this at USC Film School, who, they came in, they were very, they were part of the theater program there, the conservatory, whatever the equivalent was. And they then kind of figured out, that's not for me to make a living. So I'd like to represent actors, or I'd like to do this. So a lot of people make that pivot. But here's what you need to know. And I don't know if you've done this in particular, but if you do want to get that kind of experience, and by the way, if the ship has sailed, don't worry about it. But I know, like at SAFE, for instance, they will look for people who've had non-acting experience. In other words, working at a production company or working at an internship. So it gets a little harder. And the reason I would tell you, if you go in an agency and you've just done acting, then what they think you're doing is coming there to try to be an actor, not to be an actor in the building. But so it's tough, because there are some students I know, like at USC, and that's all they've done during the summer, and they're very creative, and then they pivoted. So it doesn't mean it's not going to happen, and it may take a little more of, when they get that interview, to talk about how they pivoted.
Can I say something?
Yeah, Peri would like to interject.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm back.
Peri's
So my cover letter that I wrote for something that I was applying to, like one thing that I did was be like, I used to be really into acting and that is like what I grew up doing, but now I'm trying to pivot into this section, which shows that like you have interests everywhere around like all of entertainment kind of, and also shows that you're like curious and trying to like try out new things and like engage in different aspects.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Peri.
Yeah. She's the mini professor. I love that.
Yeah, like I kind of see, I think my like acting is like you kind of had like tennis like in college, like it's something I'm really passionate about, but maybe not what I want to do my career in. And then my second question was just like right now, like we're all at home, like kind of cooped up, like how important, like in like such a industry where like connections are important, like how important is LinkedIn? Is like this kind of this new emerging thing and everyone's building a page?
It's interesting because I don't use it.
Yeah.
And I never like I don't use LinkedIn, and probably because I'm not in, I'm not looking for a job. Two of them. And so, and then some people would send me like, join my LinkedIn. I was like, I don't know how to join your LinkedIn next, but you all know how to do it. And I hear it's a valuable tool. So definitely use it. So don't look to me for that advice, because to me, it's just something that exists out there. By the way, Peri knows, my whole family knows, it's amazing that I can actually do this Zoom thing, because when we started doing it, Tori will tell you, the first time she had spent an hour tutorial with me, just showing me how to get on.
Yeah, you also asked how to do a Google search 3 days ago.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I've gotten that too, Peri.
Okay, the peanut gallery.
Crazy.
Okay, I know
He won't learn.
Okay, I'm glad I brought my sidekick in. I've got the both of you coming at me. That's awesome. Okay, so anybody else?
Yeah, we've got Tristan.
Hi. So my question sort of is more about the mentor-mentee aspect that you were mentioning. So of course, you and Tori have a very well-established relationship, as we can see, and sort of asking with how tips about like whether that was a formal, that first conversation that you had with Tori or with your first mentee, like how that first conversation sort of went, like who initiated that and what questions were asked, and sort of how it can also potentially go wrong and how to deal with that as well.
That's a really good question. So speaking to our situation, so we connected randomly in the class over this kind of funny thing. And again, it's so much of this, but by the way, careers, finding that mentor, if you do, it's sliding doors, okay? It's both sliding doors, but it's seizing opportunity. So that's a difference. So you have that sliding door moment, and then if it seems like the right opportunity, then you try to you execute upon that, okay? And you navigate it. So for Tori, it was just a natural, organic thing where, and Tori, you're also not forgetting, but didn't mention do you remember we had a guest in, and I went a little off kind of I had a guest in who was in the brand space, and she was a USC grad, and it was very interesting because she was in the brand space, but it was about, YouTubers and bringing influencers in, and she was part of that business. I knew zero about that. So I had Tori and her friend Tia and Elias, who had kind of chaperoned me when I went to my first USC game, we were talking, and then I asked Tori and Tia, I said, I don't know anything. Do you even know the brand that she works for, and this person? And they're like, yeah, we know the brand. We'll do the research. And they literally gave me all the information. So they leaned in. So this kind of started the organic nature of this all. And, and then we got to the end of class. And the first year, I did not, fall of 18, I used my CAA assistant, Christy, who was amazing, helped me to design the syllabus. She was my TA as well, but that became unmanageable for her and for me. So coming back, I said, I have to have a TA. And so we got to the year end, and it was just kind of a no-brainer for me. And, Tori had done extremely, extremely well in the class, and we had built this rapport. And I just asked, Tori was the first ask. I said, Tori, I don't know if you'd be interested. And so that only got us to the point of now Tori Westmoreland's going to be my TA. And then it literally built over this year because we spent hours. I mean, communicating, we're not like, it's texting, there's so much that goes on, and, and John knows, and Peter knows, and so much that goes on into teaching a class. The one class is 3 hours, the other one is 2 hours. And so whether we created, in the second one was created from whole cloth. So we, and it's every little thing to make it, so we just kept working, and it was kind of like, it just became like, Tori, you are definitely like my 4th significant mentee. And she's like, Steven, you're a so it happened organically, and you can't script this out. There are other students in the class who, she already did. So now we got Michelle in here. That's my wife. The whole family, it's a family affair. So anyway, so to answer your question, like any kind of relationship, it became organic, and it just evolved into this. Just the same as it did for Alex Kaplan, who's now the business affairs executive at CAA, who started on my desk and then was promoted within our group. And she did all the right things. And that's how these relationships, but there's also that mutual respect of time. As Tori said, it takes, the mentee has to lean in, but it's finding that balance. It's just like anything else in life, and communication. So gotta be able to communicate well, both, and whether there's, as a mentee, you have to be able to take criticism. Although Tori, you're perfect. Didn't make any mistakes.
Oh my God. Right.
Any other questions?
Yeah, we've got Muskan.
Yeah, hi again. I just wanted to make sure nobody else had a question, because I've already asked some, but so you talked a bit about, like, when Nikki asked his question, for example, about like being in the acting side and then pivoting into the more business side.
Right.
I was wondering if people also do, because I mean, I understand going into the creative acting side is a lot harder in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if people do it the other way around. So like, just to kind of get your foot in the door, start with the business side to then, work for the act, because I know I want to go into the creative side.
Great question. So what I would say to people, for those who come to agencies and start in the mailroom, each of their goals is not to necessarily be an agent. In fact, a lot of the folks who come in want to be producers. Some of them want to be writers, directors, actors. I wouldn't say you're not going to go through that if you want to, but so they come in to get the experience. And it's also great if you were starting the mailroom and then you became an assistant to, a literary agent who represented writers and directors, then it gives you a whole window into that, because our assistants at CA are on all of our calls. So when you're an assistant to a talent agent, you're hearing all the conversations with the actor. Going back to the director or producer who's represented by a lit agent, they're hearing all the conversations. So you are learning. That's only one perspective from which you're learning. The agents and we are also dealing with, producers on projects, and you're dealing with people on the creative side all the time. I mostly deal with the business affairs, the deal making folks, but there are often, I'll deal with people who are the heads of the studios on certain deals, closing them, and they'll just call me. When you represent a big, major director, they'll call and they say, look, Steven, we really need to what will it take to wrap this deal up? And, and I'm on calls and I hear so much about the process and have learned so much. So to answer your question, yes, lots of people come in with the idea of, some people want to go into a writer's room. And then, like I said, we don't represent many writers now except non-WJ writers, but before, when we did, and they're getting a window into that, and they're also making connections. And the connectivity and the connections that can be made when you started an agency are incredible. It gives you this, it creates, and it's a very social kind of thing. So, you have your social life on campus. Think of leaving that with your close friends with whom you associate. You take it to an agency, right? You start with a group like a class in the mailroom. And, our older daughter, her primary social life now centers around, CAA and her friends from CAA.
Right. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
I think that's all the questions we have.
I've got one.
Oh, okay.
Never
Aiden.
So I'm planning on going into documentaries, but I kind of have an opposite situation to the average person, I'd imagine, because I have a kid who's pretty like desirable as a subject, and he's not talking to a lot of media, but we went to high school together. So he's willing to talk to me, but I don't have really experience with film or making documentaries specifically yet. So I'm curious where I should go, or like what resources you think I should use if I want to sort of learn. I mean, I still have like a year while he prepares for this trial that he's in to prep. And I'm curious where I should go to sort of get together a team or prepare myself to make a documentary about him that's worthwhile.
So I'm going to be completely honest, like questions like this, and this is not in my wheelhouse.
Yeah,
So,
I was gonna say at the beginning of this, you might not have an answer.
no, so I mean, I guess, but I can answer the question, because what I would say, if you can go and spend time with another filmmaker who is a documentarian, or either a director or a producer of documentaries, or if you had a relationship, there was a company wherever, and you could go on an informational kind of thing and talk to them, that would be where I would start.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Boy, we've gone a long time. So first, I'm going to say, then I'm going to come back to both Peter and John. First, I want to say to the class, thank you so much. This has been really a pleasure coming in and talking to the Bobcats, the Bateses. Such a great school. Love that place. Love everything about it. Number two, I want to thank my mentee. That's it, Tori. This is it. The last one that you're TAing, because we finished.
Yeah.
So we had a good run. Bye. No.
See you never.
See you never. So anyway, thank you, Tori, for coming in and managing this with me, and helping. It's more than being my partner in crime through everything, and even postseason, which this is. Thank you, Tori.
Yeah, of course.
Peter, thank you, and John, thank you. And I don't know if you have any questions, or you want to wrap this up from your end.
I just want to thank you for spending some time with us, Steven, and for revamping your March session, which sadly was not able to happen in person, and for working with us to come back and do it in a way different format, but still find a way to share your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steven.
Oh, hi. You hung in there.
I wouldn't have missed it.
Wouldn't have missed it. Because I'd give you a hard time if you didn't, right?
I would have waited for the text messages, yes.
I would start asking you questions. So what was the last question I was asked? Okay. Anyway, but I guess it's been recorded, so you could have looked at the recording. And John, so that's it. I think that's a wrap, everyone. Thank you. I will see, for those who will be coming back to campus, I will see you all there. And thanks so much.
We're going to hold you to that, Steven. Thank you so much.
Bye, John. Yeah, we'll be in touch. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.